Fast Wheels here. Today I'm going to talk to you about how to take care of a flat tire when you're out on the road, and even to change a tire. Now, what we have here is a Handcycle. The only difference between a Handcycle and a regular upright bike or recumbent, as far as tire changes go, is the location of the wheel. If you have your upright bike or your recumbent upside down, it'll look the same. And when you're changing a tire on either one, you're going to want it upside down. Now, the Handcycle has 3 wheels, 1 in the front, 2 in the back. Your rear wheels, you can easily change just by tipping the bike over on the side. Or, it's an Allen wrench screw. You unscrew that, you can pull the wheel off. I prefer to pull the wheel all the way off. I think it's easier to work with. Now with the front wheel, before you change your tire, you want to have it in a small gear. You got the big gears and the small gears. The smaller gear you have, the more slack you're going to have in the chain, and you're going to want that. Now, I know obviously when you're riding, you're not going to be on a small gear, and you're probably not going to be thinking about it, but you can hold the bike up. You can hold the bike up and shift your gears. And boom, we're in the small gear. Now this bike has got quick disconnect skewer, which with these, you simply pull the lever out and then you unscrew it on this side. Don't unscrew it all the way. There's a couple of springs inside, and when you're on the road, you'll have a hard time finding it. Next thing you want to do is flip this bracket up. Most newer derailleurs will have this button here, and you push the button and it will hold that bracket up. Then, if you're capable, get your knees out. I have use of this leg really good and partial use in this one. Paraplegic will probably need some help with this. You have to spread the forks just a hair and give it a nice little tug, and it separates. Once you have that done, you pull this chain around and your wheel is free. Next step, you're going to need your tools. In another video I did, I mentioned what you need in your toolkit. And this is where you're going to see how it works. I keep my toolkit stored underneath my cooler. Inside the cooler, I've got my 3-liter water bladder, food, and happy bits. Open up the toolkit. It's easier to remove everything. That way when you're working, you've got it all there. Here's one of the tools I forgot that I moved up here. Definitely have to fit this out. This is a cool stop tool, which I talked to you about in the last video. The link will be in my page to where you can get it on Amazon. I am not paid by any of these people. All right, first thing you want to do, well, this would have a flat tire, so, oops, I got a flat. You're going to want to make sure any remaining air that was in it is gone. There's a little screw here, or nut. Unscrew that. And when it's time to fill the tire back up again, you'll see the importance of this. So on your spare tubes, do not lose that. It's important. The next step we're going to do is to break the bead. You want to do it with the gears facing away from you, because as most people know who have been riding for a while, gears are sharp and they will cut the heck out of you. And when you're a para, you're not going to feel it, and you'll be bleeding out bad before you even realize it. Now to break the bead, you start out by putting your thumbs on the tire and your fingers on the rim on the other side, and you just apply pressure. And you do that all the way around the tire. Now, for those of you who are not aware, there are different style tires. You'll see it as clincher and tubular. This is a clincher. This is the most common one. It has a rib on the inside of the outside of the tire, and inside the rim there's a slight little rib, and that locks in place to create the bead, so the tire doesn't fall off. The next step, you're going to break out your tire levers. The first one, you're going to stick inside underneath the tire, pull it out, and lock it onto one of the spokes. A lot of people see the tire levers and don't have a clue what those are for. This is to lock onto the spoke so that you've got a good purchase point for the rest of the time. Then you take your second tire lever and you get a bite, hopefully. And then you just pull it right out. You notice when I got to the end, that one fell out. Once you've got this out, you want to remove your tube. You pull it back where you can see your tube, and you just grab it, and you do it right where the valve is. Then you just pull it on out. That's done. Now, you got a flat tire for a reason. Now's the time where you see if you can find out why. Now, this is the part that can hurt. If it's a piece of glass or a thorn that's gone through the tire, it's all the way through the tire, it was sharp enough to put a hole in the tube, it'll probably cut your finger. But you run your finger along the inside of the tire, the whole diameter of it, and you look for something sharp. If you can't find anything sharp, then you break the bead on the other side where you can see your rim tape. The rim tape should be solid with no breaks in it, with the exception of where your inner tube, where your valve stem goes in, which is here. Now, if you're changing the tire, at this point, you'll just remove the tire from the rim, which all you have to do is give it a pull. But changing your tubes, this is the way you're going to do it on the side of the road. You're going to pull the tube out, unwind the whole thing, get it all separated, take off the valve cap. Whether you keep the valve cap or throw it away, doesn't matter, just don't leave it on the side of the road. Always carry your trash bag with you. Remove the nut. Then you open your valve stem simply by unscrewing it, push it in, and here's the fun part. You blow up your tire a little bit. You do this to make it easier to put the inner tube inside the wheel. And you close off the valve again. With the Presta valves, lefty loosey, righty tighty, just like any other nut and bolt. Start out putting that inside the hole, and you run your inner tube around. And you're going to want to make sure that it is also seated inside the rim. Now, when it comes to this part, I like to start at the valve stem. And before we go, you need to put that nut back on. You'll see why it's important in a moment. Now, we just start putting the tire back in. And the first part is real easy. You just popping it on in, very little resistance. It'll start getting harder and harder. And this is where you need good, strong thumbs. There are some people who can do the whole thing with just their thumbs. I can't. That's where the cool tool comes in. Now, you'll see a lot of people who will teach you to use your tire lever to seat it in. The problem with this, the tire lever could pinch the inner tube, and as you're going, put a hole in the inner tube, then all this is for nothing. This nice little cool stop, you stick on the rim on one side, and the other side on the lip of the tire. And then you simply pull it over. And you work your way around like this. It takes a little bit of time and a little bit of effort, but it's so much easier. And it was actually a quad who introduced me to these. And he uses this on his regular wheelchair. So if a quad can do it, everybody else can. There's little bitty bites. You don't have to be too aggressive. And that's that. Here's where we break out our CO2 cartridges. Now, remember in the other video, I call this the crack pipe. Always have to have that. Have your CO2 cartridge and have it wrapped up with something over top. When you start releasing the CO2, it gets ice cold and it will cause frostbite on your fingers. And that brings us to the reason why you use this. Normally, most people will hold the tire so the valve stem doesn't go in. If you're using a regular pump, that's fine. If you're using CO2, you're going to freeze the inner tube, and then once it starts building up pressure, it's going to pop. I found this out the hard way. This is a one-time good deal here. Don't worry about it popping the tire. The CO2 holds enough air to fill this tire up to, I think it's 120 PSI, which most small tires handle. If you're on a bigger fat bike tire that holds like 35 PSI, that's when you have to be kind of careful and adjust it. Once the CO2 has been punctured, it's done. You've got a threaded end of your crack pipe, and then you got the valve end. You screw the CO2 into the threaded portion. You'll feel the resistance. Once you do, you crack it in the rest of the way, all the way. Then you take it up here to your valve, hold it in, and then you gently loosen the CO2. There it is going in the tire. And then we hold off for a second. And see how cold that is? It's all frozen over. Now we take a look at the outside, make sure the inner tube isn't herniated anywhere. And we've got enough pressure where we can hold with our thumb. And you open her up and let it inflate. And the pressure's equalized. We're done. Now, one thing to keep in mind about CO2, which is very important. This will be good enough to get you where you're going. But you let this thing sit overnight and you're gonna have a flat tire again. CO2 molecules are smaller than regular breathing air. They're small enough where they can seep out of the tiny little holes that are inside the rubber. And it will last, like I said, it will last about 24 hours before it goes flat. So when you get home, you're gonna wanna drain the air out of the tire and pump it up with a regular pump. Now, as a tip, when you get a flat, if you actually have a hole in the tire, that's where I use these glueless patches. You just take it, unstick it, and wherever the hole is on the inside of the tire, you put it there. If you leave the hole open, the inner tube will hernia out and you'll get a flat again. And a lot of people use a $1 bill to do the same. I have better use of my money. Once that is complete, it's time to put the wheel back on the bike. Now, I have disc brakes, So when I'm putting it in, I want to make sure the disc brake aligns up inside the caliper. And my parking brake is a regular caliper type, so this would be the same as any other bike. You want to make sure the tire goes in between and they rest right around where the rim is. And to get started, we just gently set it on top of your forks. Take the chain, pull it out, put it back on that small gear. That's another reason why we went with one gear. You're gonna have to pull your forks apart just a little bit and it locks right in. Then you screw this till it's nice and snug. Then on the other side, you take your lever, go to flip it up, going as snug as it was, that was too hard. So you lock it down and loosen. And you keep loosening until it's just at the point where you can flip it on. Some people's arms are stronger than mine, some are weaker. You go with what you can handle. Once that's done, you take your arm, you push it back so that D10 pin releases, and you carry it forward. And you're done. It's that simple.